I'm going to kickstart this session by reading something from this book called When We Loved. It's a poetry collection that I put together and with illustrations from a Kenyan illustrator by the name of Gemini. And I just thought maybe we need to warm up to a very short piece. The music of love is a sweet melody. It always finds its way up the charts of the mind, then sets up camp or builds a castle, if allowed. It's okay, you may clap. Welcome to The Right Space. My name is Morset Billie. I'm a spoken word artist, a creative enterprise consultant, and a foodie. I speak 5 languages. I speak Shona, I speak English, I speak a little bit of Ndebele, a bit of Portuguese, and a lot of poetry. So as part of my creative enterprise, I curate events and literature events, I would say. It's not just spoken word, but also writing and everything to do with literature, like this space called The Right Space. So The Right Space is a platform where I invite people who contribute to anything that leads up to, from the creation to the production to the distribution to the everything to do with literary work, from the moment someone thinks of writing something to the stage where they put it out to the consumers of literary work. And so this isn't confined to just books and the usual that people think of when they think of literature. This goes to even plays and film and music. And that's why today we are talking about script writing. And so this session, I invited 2 amazing script writers I know who I think are going to really, invite us into that world of script writing and tell us more or share with us more on what exactly is this thing that we call script writing. So I think to begin this session, we may I think I would like to invite Klara to introduce herself.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Klara, MaSibanda, Klara Ana Rosa, Klara Wojtkowska. I have many names, which is appropriate for a writer. Right? We like words. Might as well use a lot of them. I am a writer, a musician, a director, a shikiro also, a festival organizer, a teacher. I suppose I would like to put all of those things under one word, so maybe I'll just being Klara. Definitely what I found in my writing process, I have written a few books. I'm currently slamming my head every day over a PhD thesis, which I'm going to turn into a book. And I found that there's something about vocalization that, in my case, through all of my work, is necessary. And maybe that's also why scripts were my kind of first port, writing-wise. The first things that I was writing, even as a kid, the first thing I wrote was a play that was performed by my class in school. So there's something about putting the voice to the word that is very natural, and that's where we say, where do we do that as humans? We do that in what we call scripts. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. And I think also just to ease into this session, maybe we may introduce ourselves I don't know who wants to volunteer. Boaz, just introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Boaz, formerly known as Apollo. I'm a poet, soundscaper, and a writer as well.
My name is Satenda. I am a chef and a creative.
Awesome.
I'm Peter. I'm a musician and a poet.
My name is Chabudzwa Kuchero. I'm a publisher and an author.
I'm Audrey. I'm an author and an educator.
My name is Tino. I am a writer and a video editor by profession.
Overflow.
Hi, my name is Zaza. I'm one of the presenters.
Thank you. Okay, so the reason why I did that was, well, not the overflow thing, but just people introducing themselves, is that it's good to have, poetry events, but like most of my events are very, intimate audience kind of events, and it's amazing to have everyone, have a little bit of knowledge of who is in the room. It also helps with the conversation. So, now that I know that you're a writer, she's a writer, he's in publishing and he's into music and a chef, and I'm a foodie, so he's a writer and a foodie, and a chef. So it helps the conversation to sort of like connect with the people who are in the room. And I'm not sure if Boaz is live streaming. You're not live streaming, you're just recording. Okay, great. Okay, because I was gonna say, in as much as we have other people joining us virtually, I think it's great to really connect with the people who are in the room. But anyway, back to the session. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here, for braving the cold. I think you mentioned something about how, in your mind, even as a kid back then, you came up with a story, and you thought, to give this story a voice, I need to write a script for it. Can you tell us a bit more, like the significance of script writing in telling stories?
Yes, I think there are a lot of theories and philosophies around that, but it comes down to, if we look at what in the Bible, where it says, in the beginning there was the Word, which is a very masculine take on something that the word is something fixed. But if you look at, you could say the sacred feminine way of things. In the beginning there was the voice. The word does not exist without the sound that backs it. Because the sound is the frequency, is the vibration that gives this thing life. So for a script, you can write it, but where are the voices? What is the voice? What is the vibration that is going to give this thing life? And I think that's where, I think it's quite natural for us people, even if you look at how popular audiobooks are right now, how popular, just how natural it is to listen to stories, how much a story can be written down and it will mean nothing to you, but somebody will tell you the story and suddenly it has a heart. And I think that's really, for me, the origin of scripts. A lot of script writing, whether courses or classes, try to bring script writing to a form, like it's a kind of form. I don't believe that. That's not my style. It has never been my style. My scripts have always been slightly, experimental when it comes to form, or I don't know, just outside of that form. I believe that script writing has to do with the knowledge that this story has to be spoken.
Interesting. So from the idea that's in your mind, and then you put it down, whether on paper or you're going digital, you're typing it somewhere, and then it's then taken from that form where it's something that someone can read, and they give a voice to it, whether they're saying it or they're acting it out, because I understand you also write for theater. So in that process, when you look at all of that, what do you think is maybe let's start with the challenges. What sort of challenges do you think a script writer can face in doing all of that?
Yeah, I feel like again we can only speak from our perspective. So I'll tell you from my perspective. The first challenge of any writer is the story. Is there a story? Is there a good story? Is there a story worth telling? Really, truly worth telling? Some people say that all stories are worth telling. I don't think so. I don't feel so. Again, maybe it's I'm originally from Poland. I think we're a bit snobs when it comes to certain things. So there is kind of like a thing, like certain stories, meh, they can pass,
Can you give examples?
Oh man, examples.
What kind of story can you think of and say, I don't think this is worth telling?
Well, I don't know if I give the best examples, but if I suppose it's a bit of a cliche, where there are movies where there's an aspiring writer who comes and tells and says, I have this great story where there's a young man who wants to get enough money to buy a ring for this girl, and so then because he's really in love with this girl, and so it's a kind of cliche. There are a lot of cliches, and of course, so some people say that it's not in the story itself; it's in how the story is told, that kind of thing. But I think the question really is, first of all, does this story have soul? Does it really have heart? Is it true? And when we say is it true, it's not is it factually true? Is it true? Does it speak to the essence of humanity, of my humanity or anybody else's humanity? And I suppose the other question that I really do ask myself these days, that I didn't used to ask myself, but I really do, is this story, is this a story or is this a trauma? Because I've found, I don't know, this is my last book that I wrote about ceremony theater. It has a lot of that question in it. How many of the stories that we tell, how many even of the scripts that we glorify or the books that we glorify are actually just traumatizing and retelling certain traumas and asking the people who engage with those texts to be traumatized in some way. I don't know, because it's not that, with trauma, it does need to be spoken about. But I think these days, for me, I'm just interested in how do we actually go a step further? How do we stop traumatizing? How do we stop hurting people with our stories, with what we are making up? And I suppose that's the other question of, is it true? If I write a script about how, horrible men are to women, let's say, and it's just about that. Men are horrible to women, and it's just that. Am I really doing any good? Am I adding beauty to the world? Or am I, there's such a thing as, it's almost like violence porn, where people are attracted to certain expressions because of how awful they are. And there was a point in my life where I really looked around, I said, we are not addicted to beauty in the same way. And the question is why? Why? Because at the end of the day, when I want to feel better, I want something beautiful. I want to read something, see something, engage with something that says, you know what, we as human beings are beautiful. We have great potential for beauty. We're not just destroyers. We're not just about violence. We're not just about horrible things. And we've gotten so addicted to this thing of telling the truth about the violence, but we can't seem to capture the truth about the goodness. And it's usually because goodness is original. It's very original, it's personal, it's intimate, and it's much harder to put into words.
Wow, reminds me of a video. Yeah, you make that. There's a video I saw recently where this lady was asking people to post, to send to her their stories of their beautiful love stories and how amazing their relationships are. And she was very specific, and she said, I want all those people who are in amazing relationships to share their stories, because it seems it's only people in terrible relationships who are telling this story.
Exactly.
So now it ends up looking like everyone in a relationship is in a terrible relationship, and I guess that's captured by what you just said.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's something about the negative emotions that feels more powerful than positive emotions to, I don't know, most, if not all humans. I don't know why it's like that, because if you look at even the press or the media in general, how it's very easy for someone to write, almost it has been caught doing this. That attracts more attention than to say Morset is doing this amazing thing, he has done this. I don't know why, but it is what it is, I guess. We'll hear from the audience later on in the Q&A.
Well, I should just add that, a good script usually has a whole kind of panoply of emotions and
Balances.
aspects and balances. And, very early on, I remember one of the things that I would say with some of my earlier theater scripts, that writing is a form of redemption. So it's not that we don't tell the horrors that are there, but it's that if you think of a story as like a child that you are actually taking care of, of course you want the truth of it, but at the end of the day also, you want to take care of it. It's not just the story that is coming through you. You yourself are also teaching the story that there's another part that can be added to it, that can make it grow. That the kind of if we look at in general, so-called, ancient wisdom, how did they think of stories? They thought of stories as living beings that don't actually belong to any human. They sit on humans' backs. They come and they pick certain people. They migrate sometimes. Some stories never move anywhere. Other stories, they migrate all over the world. They sit on a human's back and they expect to be taken care of. They expect to be fed. And they expect to learn also through being told other aspects of themselves. It's like a relationship, you and the story.
Wow. That's profound. You mentioned the book you recently published, Theatre Ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
When you were putting together that book, when you were writing that book, how was the process different from when you usually write scripts? What were the main differences if you looked at how you usually write scripts and how you wrote that book?
Oh, it was very different because that book is actually a collection of scripts. So there was a point where I said, okay, I want to put all of my scripts thus far in one place because there's a philosophy around it. And it has to do with the other question that I ask myself when a story wants to come through me in script form. Usually it's a story that there is a ceremony involved. There's a healing process involved with that particular story. So there's that question of, in general in writing, when we write, we also give life to. So what are we giving life to, So with that book, after so many years of doing this thing I called ceremony theater, I said, well, I'm just going to put all of these scripts in one place. I'm going to write introduction, conclusion. I'll present it as if I die tomorrow, I can say this is what I did. This was the philosophy around it, and maybe it can serve other people as well. Maybe they can build on their own ways of doing this thing. Because I think also it's like a lot of us writers, a lot of us teachers, we see gaps. Where do we see gaps? The things that are not talked about. So the one thing that I feel is not talked about enough. You'll hear a lot, especially if you're an aspiring writer, how to write a successful script, whatever successful means. But the question is, what are you giving life to? what then starts to appear and haunt you as a consequence of you engaging in essentially what is a form of creativity, is to create, to give life to. What do your children grow up, and what do they do in the world or in other people's dreams? So those were questions that I asked with that book.
Wow. So we've spoken about that process, and you mentioned something about balance when we're talking about the negative and the positive. There's also balance in terms of, I understand a script has different elements to it. You want to tell the story, you've got a plot, you've got a story, you've got form, you have all these aspects that come into one thing that we then end up calling a script. How do you balance that to say maybe, because I'm sure there are some stories that when someone is writing a story, they say, when someone's writing a script rather, they may say, I want this story to be the dominant thing in this script. And then I'm sure there are other times when you're like, I think character building in this script should be really on point. And then there's another story where maybe there's some aspect that you think should be the dominant thing. So when people are reading the script at the end, they'll be like, wow, that script was amazing because, you know, the world building was amazing, or, you know, that kind of thing. So in your work, what you've done so far in script writing, how do you balance those things? What do you give preference to, and how do you decide that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I find that there are two different approaches that I found. One of them is sometimes you get things as an assignment, whether it's a teacher assigns it to you, a friend, a personal challenge, you know, write a play with 2 characters, 30 minutes max, you know, where there's a lost possession is a major theme, you know. Those are fun challenges. They help you with your craft. You know, craft is very important, you know, as kind of keeping your pen sharp, so to speak. And then, but when it comes to the stories that inspire you, that find you, that say, I want to be told through you, I've just found every one of them has a different form. They come with form. And listening for the form, for me, has become just as important as any other aspect. Because usually the story, you can say it in a sentence, 3 sentences, 5 sentences. But there's something about the form, which again, we go back to the sound, the rhythm of the language, even the language that it wants to be told in, the characters that want to tell this story. Who is it that wants to tell this story? The character, you know, people will talk about characters being complex or believable or so on. Again, in my book, I write about that because I find that to be a really ridiculous argument. Nobody is really that interested in listening to average, so-called average people being characters, right? Everyone wants heroes, right? You want interesting characters. Do you really want somebody where you're like, yeah, that's believable? Believable to whom? That's the other thing. So it's, again, going back to the truth of the matter and that multi-layered aspect of these different songs almost. A lot of my scripts, they just have very musical elements. And then usually after that, everything else comes. Once the form is there, the story comes first, the form comes second, in my process. After that, it's like there's a space that has been built for different aspects of this story to be told within this paradigm, world, form, whatever you want to call it. Characters come in, they appear, they do what they need to do. Sometimes we will, you know, there's the kind of normal thing of a constant argument with characters. So there's a script I'm currently working on. I'm constantly arguing. Arguing? Maybe not arguing. We are discussing, where you want the character to grow a bit more than the character feels comfortable with. But all writers, those are the wonderful moments where your character lives their own life, where suddenly you see the story takes on its own life. You feel that you are just the channel, the medium of this story. And how that process happens, it's magic. So your own magical rituals you have to get into that sphere, absolutely. Do them all.
All right. Interesting characters. Fun fact, my name, Morset. My mom saw this name in a book she was reading, and the character was interesting enough for her to say, I want to name my child after this character. And for those of you who, because I've been asked before, so Morset is your stage name, right? What is your real name? No, Morset is my actual name, so I couldn't say it. It came from a book. Yes, so I also want to touch on something which I think is relevant to this discussion. You come from Poland, right? You have lived in America, you've lived in Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at all those, that experience of living in those different environments, what is that done, like contributed to in terms of how you write your scripts? I'm assuming that living in those three different environments sort of influences a person in a different way in each circumstance. So how is that? Do you think it has affected, it has influenced how you, when you look at maybe world building and just what you hold to be, this is the norm, this is interesting, because usually interesting is outside of what's the normal, you gave an example of the average. The exciting stories or the exciting characters come out of, they go beyond the average or the norm in a particular environment. So if you look at those three countries that you have lived in, what sort of, do you think it has influenced the way you see the world, and how has that influenced, if it has, how has that influenced your writing?
Yes, definitely it has, and I would say I would go beyond those three countries. I have a very global streak. I've lived in there are other places I've lived, maybe shorter, longer periods of time, but definitely I've traveled, though I've never been to Asia. I've never been to China, but I do like Chinese food. It's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey because, of course, you could say language has been the biggest question and also the biggest thing to fight for. There are certain things, for me, my two main writing languages are English and Polish. Though in terms of the scripts that I've written, the stories that I've written that have come out of Zimbabwe, there's a lot of Shona involved. And usually when things come in specific languages, they can't be in any other language. So I don't translate myself in that way, though I have struggled with the books that I've written. Usually what happens is I write a book in Polish and I write a book in English. They're not the same book. People say, oh, is this a translation? I say, no, it's not. It's usually the same story, but it's me telling it in one language than me saying it in another language. I'll tell different things, different anecdotes, different storylines, but the subject more or less is the same. So that question of translation has been a big one, because also it speaks to audience. Most of my audience is in Poland, even for my English language things, which I find interesting. I feel like Poland understands me, which is amazing. To be understood at all is amazing. But the question of why, it's a question that I'm still working on. You know, there are certain questions it's like your life path, you kind of have to trust that it will be shown to you. When I first started, I guess you could say traveling, or I've always kind of been in and out of places, but consciously so, even as a writer, I was very conscious of this idea of appropriation, these ideas that somehow there are things that don't belong to you. And I've had to discard that very firmly, and I'm now a huge opponent of those things. In the sense that when stories come to you and through you, they are not thinking those things. They're not thinking about you as a tourist. There's no such human being as a tourist. There's no such thing as a person who is in an environment who is actually unaffected by the places that they are called to go. Of course, you know, maybe there are people out there, they say, oh, I'm going to go to the beach in Mozambique to just have a vacation, and all I want is to be drunk for 2 weeks on the beach in Mozambique, and that's my break. That's a different kind. What I'm talking about is the artist. There's no such thing as an artist who is a tourist. Artists are sponges. Everything you encounter is material. Everything that comes to you is coming into you, is coming through you. If you're sensitive enough, and if you're an artist, then you are very sensitive, and I commiserate with you. You will have dreams about those things. You are connected. You are plugged in a way that this mainstream world can't even imagine, you know? So even first of all, your own personal survival, keeping your mental well-being somewhat above water, congratulations if you're there, you know? And then the next step is, what are these gifts for? I'm meant to serve the world. How? Through my ability to feel. Every person you encounter, you know, these stories. So I found that in my writing now, I let, as much as I can, to be courageous enough to let whatever wants to come through, because COVID changed a lot of things also. It did something to us as a global village that had not been done before. It's not that we were all going through the same thing. Everyone has their own COVID adventure. But it's that we were going through like a similar ceremony in real time at the same time. It was when, you know, you would read the newspaper about what's happening in Russia, and it was like COVID. Oh yeah, I know that. I recognize that. We have it here too, you know? So it's like a process. I call it, I've been working on stars for too long, but that perspective of what do the stars think of us when they look at us? They see us as one. They see us as, and also, not just do they see us as one, but again, the artist is being asked to step up your ability to imagine, you know? If I tell you right now about, for example, the tragedy of what's going on in Gaza, is your heart, your courageous heart, more expressive when you say, I feel those people because I'm also human? Or is it, I'm not those people, so I'm not even going to bother? What is the role of the artist, you know? So I think in that sense, what I'm hoping for, because I really feel like I want to express these things better. I want to be better in my own craft. So I'm hoping that in the future, one day finally, I will write a book, and it will encompass all of the places that I have ever lived, and all of the interesting stories from all of those places, and that it will speak to every human being who reads it. That's my dream.
Wow, universality. That's interesting. And I think just to round off this session, I'm sure you want to share something with the audience, some music or something from your play. Sure.
Yeah, maybe since we
before we get into the question and
into
answer.
the wonderful, yes, the other speaker, you are all
Yep.
for a treat.
So I was reading the other day on this very wonderful source of information called ChatGPT.
Does that thing work in Zimbabwe?
I'm kidding. I was reading somewhere that there are certain people who, when they're thinking of stories, they don't just imagine the stories, but they also imagine the feeling that whoever is going to consume that story is going to have. And according to that, I'm forgetting which book it was, but according to that book, it said that alone gives some people some sort of, I think, an advantage in terms of how they tell their stories. So I always feel like sometimes, as writers, sometimes we think of stories and then we put them down. But in that moment when you're putting the story down, most of the time you just want to tell the story. You're just a writer who wants to tell a story. But surprisingly, when you put that story out, whether it was a book or it's a film, it was a script that you're putting down, which is now being acted as a play, or it's now a movie, whenever it goes out there, sometimes you get shocked to find how many people out there will be like, I relate. Like, wow, it's like they're writing about me. It's like they're telling my story. And I think that's the beauty of amazing storytelling, which Klara is referring to, where you just put your story out there and you find so many people resonating with it, even when you were not even thinking of the story resonating with a lot of people. I'm sure we've seen how Nigerian movies relate with a lot of people in Zimbabwe, especially a certain demographic. Z-World, find like there's a huge market. There are so many people who look at the stories and they're like, I can relate with that, and that's why they're glued to the TV all the time watching. Are we ready?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. So I'm going to read, since I was talking about it, I'm going to read an excerpt from the Star Ceremony, which is my, there are excerpts of it in my recent book, the Ceremony Theatre book, but it's actually a standalone book on its own. So it was published last year. And the form of this book, when it came to me in terms of forms, it came to me as a series of times. And this is, I think, also really important when the stars started kind of talking to me in many ways. It was all about time. And we don't often really consider time, but that perspective of that place and time, it's essentially synonymous, they're the same. And that from the stars' perspective, as kind of different stars affect us at different times, and they're given a certain time of life to tell a story, and then they pass away, and that story is no longer kind of alive in the same way. So yes, but I definitely completely agree with what you were saying before. And just before I read this excerpt, I wanted to say that one of the plays in this book, Mokosha and the Mountain, which we performed during COVID, it was in Poland. Mokosha is a Slavic goddess of the earth. So it was her story, and it was very much about goddesses and the feminine, and it was performed by a group of women, and we did it on the mountain and all these things. But we had a very unexpected audience. We didn't expect an audience for that showing. That was just us and the mountain. But there was a few men who showed up. And at the end of us performing this, it was an all-night thing, and these men were just there. There was one who had come to the mountain because he was sad. So he came to think, to kind of, to feel better. And, and we kind of asked him his impressions, and he said, I am Mokosha, which I thought was, I mean, it was one of the most beautiful responses I've gotten to my work. But I think that's where we also have the power of stories and all of these things, characters, is that people identify to the point where, you know, I couldn't have told this guy, well, you can't be a goddess, you know, because you're a man, first of all, you know, whatever. No, the fact that he identified with the goddess in that way, where he just said, I am her. Whatever story was told there, I am her. That is so beautiful, you know. So that's really our goal, isn't it, as writers. So the form of the star ceremony is a bit, I suppose there's the voice of humanity. It's kind of the voice of humanity, but the voice of humanity that has lost the spirit of the human being and is trying to find it again. So this is one of the times. The time of searching, lurching humanoids seeking for the nurturing suckling of big mother cow haunting our own spirit. Isn't it supposed to be the other way around? Not anymore, not in this strange time. Where is the spirit of the human? We need to tell his story. It's been too long. It's our story, isn't it? The story of how we got on our feet. The big spirit of the human, our ally, our soul. The stars are hungry for that story. They haven't heard it in a long time. They know the spirit of the human. They can return him to us. They can return to us his magical sister. The stars know where they are. They can point the way. They know all about calendars and maps. Really, when it comes to time and space, we should only ever ask them. They know about all of the times, all of the special times, the sad times, and the mad times, and the joyful times, and the great times. And they don't call them places, they call them times. There is a big difference, you see. The stars call everything a time because they can see everything is still being created, and the borders between the innumerable living times, they don't really exist. The stars are wise, they keep all of the different calendars, that's what they do. The universe is like a big room full of infinite numbers of calendars, and each calendar has its own special time, and all of these calendars are playing together like a symphony orchestra, beautiful music. It is like a round room full of many clocks that never show the same time, yet they are all correct simultaneously at the same time. Not one of them is wrong. They are just different, but never wrong. Where is the spirit of the human? He knew these things. He told us how to keep the calendars. Yes, that's right, there was something like that. He taught us how to keep the many calendars all at once. Nothing standard, no, standardizing, because they are all different the many times. His sister would knit and weave the calendars into cloths. She would tie the calendars inside of dolls. She would string the calendars as beads onto necklaces that women and men would wear. It wasn't just women who wore the calendars woven by the sister of the spirit of the human, the magical star sister. It was men who wore the calendars on their bodies, same as the women. The spirit of the human, he told us, you are all people. All of you are the people. He told us these things, the spirit of the human. He said, the body is the vehicle for the soul. What do you mean, vehicle? Like transport, he tried to explain. The body is like the spaceship for the soul. You go inside and then you can travel anywhere you want. But these bodies are weak, we questioned. They get sick, they die. But the soul never dies. He told us that mysterious thing, remember? He said, when the soul comes to earth, it needs a material body so the soul can operate in this life. You would make a big mistake to look first on the body and not on the soul. He warned us, the spirit of the human did. You must look at the soul first and foremost. That will tell you who is sitting before you, who it is that you are speaking to. There are some people, they have souls from distant galaxies, and there are other people who have souls only from this galaxy. Some people have very young souls that are fresh and innocent and curious like soft young oysters. And there are some people who have very old souls that are hard and tough like wizened clams and as big as a universe in themselves. And there are some souls that, when they come here, they are still in the form of an egg. They haven't hatched yet, even though they are attached to a body. There are some people who are unhatched souls, and yet they walk around attached to the world and they don't know how to see souls. Their soul hasn't hatched yet, so they don't even believe there is such a thing as a soul. But that's okay. That's all part of the plan. And yes, there is a plan. It would be a mistake, however, to take these people at their word. Their guardian angels are shaking their heads and rolling their eyes and sticking out their tongues and pulling their human forward on their energy leash, like when a dog is sniffing a curb for too long on a tiresome walk under a hot sun at noon, and they just won't give up, sniffing and sniffing and sniffing that one boring spot. And so you pull them because you have to continue the walk so you can go home. That's the same way the guardian angels are pulling their unhatched soul humans forward and rolling their eyes. There they go again. They don't know nothing yet. But now, in these strange and absurd times, we believe these people. We are fascinated by their unhatched nature. Their unhatched soul eggs have captivated us, and we stare into them like into television screens. The new cool is to imitate the unhatched soul people, to say what they say and do what they do, even when our souls cry, "No, don't do that, listen to me." We make the unhatched soul people our leaders, and we say, "Tell us more, 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 more. Tell us how to live like you, who does not yet have a soul that has emerged from its sacred egg." We adore their unhatched soul idiocies, who knows why. And they stand on the podiums we build for them, and they scream, "We are soulless, we are soulless. Everything around us is machine, and we are the soulless that live in the machine. Hooray, hurrah, that's us." Then they take pictures of themselves. They call those pictures selfies. We've seen them do it, it's true. They should call them soullessies, but they don't, they call them selfies. If they look very carefully at the picture, they can see the egg that is their unhatched soul that is attached to their body. We are waiting for their souls to hatch. Ugh, it's taking a long time. Waiting is another kind of calendar. Where is the magical sister of the spirit of the human? She knew these things. Waiting is a whole other kind of calendar. There is a special place for waiting calendars. Each one is different, but they are all correct all of the time. All of the waiting times they are correct, even if they are also demanding. The biggest waiting calendar is the one named "Waiting for Prayers to be Answered." We are praying, we are waiting for their souls to hatch. When will it happen? We used to be able to ask our ancestors these questions. Where have they gone? Where have they run away to? Have they run from this war? Or maybe something else chased them away.
Feel free to kukandamari.
Yes, absolutely. That is a universal.
Wow. That was amazing. I think at this point I'm just going to open it up to the floor. Do you have any comments, questions, contributions? Feel free. Yes, Boaz. Do you want the mic?
Oh,
Yeah, louder.
you sound better with the mic.
Says who? Me.
No, okay, thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful. I just have one question, but I think it has like two strings to it. So it's stream of consciousness. You mentioned how the world has been glorifying a lot of negative things.
Mm-hmm.
And so as an artist, I would love to believe that you are human first before you're an artist. And as a human, you are a result of what you consume. So for instance, I write my poetry, and most of it is, I think, stems from my background, a very dark background. And so, writing the negative things that took place, sort of for me, it's therapy, but also it's a way of reminding the world that it's not beautiful. It's not a beautiful world. There are kids that are living in abusive households. So for me, I call that stream of consciousness. I'm just writing things that are coming within, and I am a channel, and I do not choose or decide whether it's beautiful or it's not. So now my question becomes, how do you deal with that? in order to present the beauty that you were talking about?
Yeah. No, thank you for that question, because I also don't want to be maybe misunderstood that somehow, if you write all of your trauma down, that it's somehow bad. It's not so much that. I should maybe share a story. My first English language play I wrote, I was in college, and I have a very difficult background. And I said, look, I have to exorcise myself. There's no other way about it. It's either I exorcise myself or I die. And I wrote a play about my family. And the play was presented, it was performed. It was a very classic play. It's pretty much the opposite of everything I do now. Classic form, classic characters, classic, Chekhovian, 3-act, whatever. And it was very therapeutic, but at the same time, in the play, I told myself I'm writing the worst of the worst. Like, I'm just getting the worst, the poison. I have to extract the poison. And in the play, the character who was one of my brothers, I have several brothers, he kills himself in the play. So a few years later, my brother overdosed on drugs, which is a form of suicide. He had been, I believe ODing is a form of suicide. You're trying to kill yourself, even if it's not as direct as, a 1-act kind of thing. And there was something for me when I looked at that, and I said, it wasn't wrong, it wasn't bad. For me, the play was very therapeutic, but I wasn't able, we as a family were not able to go a step further. I was imagining what things would be like if all the poison stayed in our system. And it would have led to many deaths, not just one death. But in the play, it was my brother who died. So I think what I'm trying to say is, after you've exorcised yourself, after you get all the poison out there, you channel all the pain and so on, you take it, and then it's like, okay, whether you need to sit on it for a while, or what is the next step after that? Even for you as an artist, for all of that pain, you are the one who has the capacity, you are the healer in the situation. You are the one who transforms it. Whether it's even just through the fact that you have written it down and you are observing it with love, right? So I would just say, it's almost like, because these days what we do is it's like we isolate the trauma, and we build a border around it, and it's just there. But what if we gave it more space and more time and said, okay, but now all of the worst things in the world have happened to you. Is there meaning in that? Is there a way for all of that poison to turn into something else? You can't force it to become beautiful. You can't even force it to turn into love. You look at those stories of really miraculous stories, miracles essentially, of forgiveness, of people, being able to say, the person who did the worst thing to me, I forgive you. You can't force those things. Those things are grace. But by giving it more space than what you give it, you already allow it to become something else, Because it's like for you, your imagination for yourself. Are you your trauma? No, you are not. Are you your pain? No. So who are you? What are you? How much space do you need to be all of who you are?
Yes, you make it. More questions, comments, contributions?
I just want to know, the excerpt that she read, is it from an already published book, or is something that is coming?
Yes.
I'll ask more information after.
Yeah, no, the books are available. I suppose that's the thing about every writer, right?
Yeah.
It's a common language of commerce.
All right. So if there are no more questions, comments, thank you so much, Klara.
Thank you. I do recommend my channels if you do want to, kind of, which is Klara Ana Rosa with a K, and then Mhondoro Dreams Productions is my company. So yeah, you can find me on the social channels, on Spotify, also on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.